Why would a man take in 6 orphaned sisters that everyone else had given up on? For Victor, it was an act of love. But years later, buried secrets emerged, truths that would change everything he thought he knew. What shocking revelations awaited him? Keep watching to find out. Also, please comment where you're listening from. And if you enjoy stories like these, subscribe for more narratives. Let's begin. Victor Reed glanced at the rearview mirror of his old pickup truck. 4 of the 6 girls sat silently in the truck bed, their small hands clutching their knees, their gazes fixed on nothing in particular. In the cab, the 2 youngest sat beside him, their expressions equally blank. The silence was suffocating, heavier than the humid Savannah air. It wasn't the joyful ride home he had imagined. Instead, it felt like a funeral procession. Victor had just completed the adoption paperwork at Charleston Home for Children, officially becoming the father of 6 9-year-old girls. The girls were his daughters now, and he refused to think of them as anything less. But as the truck rumbled along the country road, he wondered what he had truly taken on. These were children who had faced a lifetime of rejection, mistrust, and pain, and now they were coming home to him. The director's words replayed in Victor's mind. The Sextuplets' tragic backstory was enough to break anyone's heart. Orphaned at 4, the girls had been passed from one foster home to another. Families had wanted them, but not all 6 together. The sisters had refused to be separated, clinging to one another in a way that frustrated caretakers and prospective parents alike. At one foster home, they were accused of stealing and beaten for crimes they didn't commit. In another, they were labeled as cursed when a woman fell ill. By the time Victor found them at the 9th orphanage, they had been deemed unadoptable. Victor pulled into his small farm just outside Savannah, where his mother, Eleanor, stood waiting on the porch. The weathered woman had insisted on helping him raise the girls. She greeted them with open arms, her warmth cutting through the tension like sunshine on a stormy day. The girls responded cautiously, offering polite nods and muttered thanks. Victor noticed their stiff postures, their wary glances. They were waiting for the moment the kindness would vanish, replaced by the cruelty they had come to expect. It was a warm afternoon, and the living room was filled with the sound of gentle humming. Amaya, the quietest of the sisters, had taken it upon herself to dust the shelves, while the others helped Eleanor in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, highlighting specks of dust dancing in the air. The house, usually bustling with quiet chatter and occasional giggles, was unusually still. Amaya's small hands moved carefully over the figurines and picture frames. Each item seemed precious. Every piece told a story about the family that had taken her and her sisters in. She couldn't help but feel out of place, like a guest overstaying her welcome. She was determined to show her gratitude by helping wherever she could. As her hands stretched toward the topmost shelf, her fingers brushed against Eleanor's prized porcelain vase. It wobbled, her breath caught in her throat. Time seemed to slow as the vase tilted, its delicate curves catching the light one last time before shattering into countless pieces on the wooden floor. The sound of the crash was deafening. Amaya froze, staring at the fragments scattered around her feet. Her heart pounded in her chest as tears welled in her wide, frightened eyes. Memories of past punishments flooded her mind, sharp words, harsh looks, and even harsher consequences. Her legs trembled as she backed away from the mess. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. She knew she couldn't hide it. Eleanor would walk in any moment, and this safe haven might turn out to be just another illusion. Before Amaya could think of what to do next, Eleanor entered the room. The older woman's face softened immediately when she saw the trembling girl standing amidst the shards. Eleanor didn't yell or scold. Instead, she hurried over, her concern etched into every wrinkle of her kind face. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" Eleanor asked, kneeling down and gently taking Amaya's small hands in her own. "Let me see. Are you bleeding anywhere? Did any of the pieces cut you?" Amaya blinked in disbelief. There was no anger in Eleanor's voice. Only worry. No accusations, no sharp words. Just care. "It's just a vase," Eleanor said softly, brushing a stray tear from Amaya's cheek. "You're more important than any piece of porcelain." The weight of Eleanor's words broke something inside Amaya. Not her spirit, but the heavy walls she had built to protect herself. The tears she had been holding back for years spilled over as she collapsed into Eleanor's arms. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Amaya cried into Eleanor's shoulder, clinging to her like a lifeline. "It's okay, baby," Eleanor whispered, stroking the girl's hair. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. You're safe here." The sound of Amaya's sobs carried into the kitchen, where her sisters and Victor exchanged worried glances. One by one, they tiptoed to the living room and stopped in their tracks when they saw the scene before them. Eleanor was still holding Amaya, who had buried her face in Eleanor's shoulder, while the older woman murmured soothing words. The sisters looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. It was the first time they had ever seen an adult react with kindness instead of anger to a mistake. A tentative hope flickered in their hearts. That evening, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Eleanor went about her usual tasks as though nothing had happened, but the girls watched her with new eyes. Amaya stayed close to Eleanor, helping her fold laundry and set the table, as if testing whether the warmth she had experienced that afternoon was real. Victor, who had heard about the incident from Eleanor, joined the girls for dinner. He noticed their quieter-than-usual demeanor and decided to address it gently. "You know," he said, his voice calm and steady, "this home isn't about things. It's about people, about us. Mistakes happen, and that's okay. What matters is that we take care of each other." Amaya looked up from her plate, her eyes still red from crying earlier. "But we've always been punished before," she said hesitantly. Her sisters nodded, their faces shadowed with old fears. Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You're not in those places anymore," he said firmly. "You're here now, with me, with Eleanor. This is your home, and you're our family. We don't punish you for accidents. We help you through them." That night, the girls whispered among themselves in their shared bedroom for the first time. They spoke about things they had never dared to voice aloud, the times they were yelled at, the nights they cried themselves to sleep, and the small, fleeting moments of happiness they had clung to like lifelines. Amaya's story about the vase became a turning point, a moment when they realized that maybe, just maybe, they could trust Victor and Eleanor. In the weeks that followed, the girls began to let their guard down. They laughed a little louder, spoke a little more freely, and even allowed themselves to make small mistakes without panicking. Eleanor and Victor noticed the change, their hearts swelling with joy. The walls were coming down, brick by brick, and a real family was beginning to take shape. As weeks turned into months, the girls slowly opened up. They began to join Victor in the garden, planting flowers and learning about his trade. Eleanor involved them in baking and household chores, turning mundane tasks into moments of joy. The house that was once quiet and filled with tension now bustled with life. One afternoon, Victor surprised the girls with a camping trip to the Okefenokee swamp. He had been planning it for weeks, hoping it would be a way for the family to bond further. That night, around the campfire, the sisters did something that left Victor and Eleanor speechless. They sang. It started with Amaya, her pure soprano voice cutting through the stillness of the swamp. One by one, her sisters joined in, their harmonies weaving a tapestry of sound that sent chills down Victor's spine. Their voices were distinct, yet perfectly blended, creating a melody so hauntingly beautiful that it seemed to echo through the trees. "Why didn't you tell us you could sing like that?" Eleanor asked, her eyes wide with amazement. The girls exchanged shy smiles. "We only sing for each other," said Leona, the second eldest, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor, determined to nurture their talent, arranged for the girls to train with the choir director at Wesley Monumental United Methodist Church. Their first session was nerve-wracking. The sisters huddled near the piano, their nervousness evident as the choir director asked them to sing. Amaya took the lead, her voice steady despite the tension. As the others joined in, their harmonies filled the vaulted ceilings of the church. When the final note faded, the director clapped slowly, her astonishment clear. That, she said, was extraordinary. Their training sessions with the choir director became a cherished routine. Twice a week, the girls would practice at the church, honing their technique and perfecting their harmonies. With each rehearsal, their confidence grew. Their first public performance came a few months later during the church's Easter service. The sanctuary was packed, and as the sisters stepped forward, their nervous energy was palpable. Victor and Eleanor sat in the front row, offering encouraging smiles. The girls began to sing, their voices blending into a powerful, uplifting hymn. By the time they finished, the congregation was on its feet, clapping and cheering. Eleanor wiped tears from her eyes. It was a moment she would never forget. Word spread quickly about the Sextuplets' talent. Invitations to sing at local events and festivals poured in. They performed at everything from charity galas to farmers markets, earning standing ovations at every turn. With each performance, their stage presence grew stronger, and their harmonies became tighter. Victor became their unofficial manager, driving them to events and handling the logistics. "You girls are going to make Savannah proud," he often said, his face beaming with fatherly pride. Eleanor, meanwhile, worked behind the scenes, helping them choose songs and design modest yet elegant outfits for their performances. The girls trusted her judgment implicitly, and her involvement gave them a sense of stability. By the time the girls turned 19, their reputation had spread beyond Savannah. One evening, as they practiced in the living room, Victor walked in holding a flyer. "There's a talent competition in Atlanta," he announced, his voice filled with excitement. "First prize is $50,000. The room erupted in cheers. "We could use the money to help us go to college," said Sienna, the practical one, "and maybe even invest in starting our own music career," added Jade, her eyes sparkling. The decision was unanimous. Over the next few weeks, the sisters threw themselves into preparation, perfecting an a cappella arrangement of a popular ballad. Their practice sessions became intense, with Victor and Eleanor acting as their biggest cheerleaders. The day of the competition arrived, and the sisters found themselves in a massive auditorium in downtown Atlanta. The stage loomed before them, its bright lights both intimidating and thrilling. Backstage, they could hear the muffled sounds of other contestants performing. When their turn came, they stepped onto the stage hand in hand. The audience fell silent as they took their places. Amaya gave the starting note, and their voices soared. The harmony was spellbinding, weaving an emotional tapestry that left the crowd breathless. By the time they hit the final crescendo, the audience was on its feet, clapping and cheering so loudly that the walls seemed to vibrate. The judges exchanged impressed glances before joining the standing ovation. The sisters didn't win first place, but were awarded the Audience Choice Prize, an honor that carried as much prestige as the grand prize. A video of their performance, recorded by an audience member, spread like wildfire online. Within days, the clip had millions of views, and the sisters became an internet sensation. Social media lit up with comments about their unique blend of talent, authenticity, and sisterly bond. Offers began pouring in: record labels, brand endorsements, and modeling gigs. Victor's phone rang non-stop with inquiries, and Eleanor joked that their once quiet home had become a bustling headquarters for rising stars. Despite the whirlwind of attention, the girls remained grounded. They continued to treat every performance as if it were their last, pouring their hearts into every song. Sitting around the kitchen table one evening, Eleanor looked at the girls, her voice filled with emotion. "You've come so far," she said. "No matter what happens next, remember this. Your bond, your love for each other, is what makes you special. Never lose that." The sisters nodded, their eyes shining with determination. They knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together. The knock on the door came early one morning, just as Victor was finishing his second cup of coffee. The girls were still in their pajamas, sprawled across the living room couch, scrolling through their phones and giggling over fan comments on their viral video. When Victor opened the door, he was greeted by a poised, elegant woman whose teary smile barely masked her nerves. "I'm Isabelle Carter," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I'm their mother." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Victor's heart clenched as he processed the revelation. He gestured for her to come inside, his protective instincts on high alert. The girls had stopped laughing, their phones forgotten as they stared at the stranger before them. Sitting in the living room, Isabelle began to explain. She told them about her early marriage to a man nearly 3 decades older, her difficult pregnancy with sextuplets, and the years of abuse she endured at the hands of her husband. When his drinking turned violent and his rage threatened her daughters, she had made the agonizing decision to leave them at an orphanage, hoping they would find safety and a better life. "I thought I'd find you again," Isabelle said, her voice cracking. I worked every day with that hope. But when I went back, you were gone. They told me you'd been moved, and I spent years searching." Tears streamed down her face as she looked at each of her daughters. "You were always in my heart." The girls were silent at first, their emotions a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and sadness. Finally, Amaya stood and walked over to Isabelle. She knelt down, wrapping her arms around her mother. "You did what you had to do," she whispered. "We forgive you." One by one, the other girls joined in the embrace, their sobs echoing through the room. Victor and Eleanor watched from the sidelines, their own tears flowing freely. The air, heavy with unresolved pain moments before, now buzzed with the energy of reconciliation. A week later, Isabelle invited them all to her resort in Asheville, North Carolina. The girls were eager to see the life their mother had built, and Victor agreed, albeit with some trepidation. He wasn't sure how this reunion would affect the delicate dynamic of their family. The drive through the Blue Ridge Mountains was breathtaking, the winding roads lined with vibrant autumn foliage. When they arrived at the resort, the girls gasped. It was stunning, an elegant mix of rustic charm and modern luxury. Isabelle greeted them at the entrance, her joy evident as she led them on a tour of the property. "This is where I poured all my energy," she said, gesturing to the manicured gardens, sparkling pool, and cozy cabins tucked into the hillside. "I wanted to create a haven for people who needed rest and renewal." The girls marveled at her accomplishments, pride shining in their eyes. For the first time, they saw their mother not as the figure who had left them, but as a resilient woman who had fought to create something beautiful out of tragedy. As the days passed at the resort, Victor found himself spending more time with Isabelle. At first, their conversations were practical, focusing on the girls, their futures, and the complexities of co-parenting. But soon, the topics became deeper, shared experiences of loss, hopes for the future, and the joy of finding family in unexpected ways. Victor admired Isabelle's resilience, her ability to transform her pain into something meaningful. Isabelle, in turn, was drawn to Victor's quiet strength and the unconditional love he had shown her daughters. His steady presence had been a cornerstone in their lives, and for that, she was deeply grateful. The girls, ever observant, noticed the subtle glances, the lingering smiles, and the way Victor and Isabelle seemed to gravitate toward each other. They began orchestrating little moments, a picnic set up for two by the lake, a book accidentally left on Isabelle's porch for Victor to return. Their matchmaking schemes were hilariously obvious, but neither adult-minded. On their final evening at the resort, Isabelle invited everyone to a special dinner in the main dining hall. The room was lit with soft candlelight, the table set with elegant simplicity. As dessert was served, Victor stood, clearing his throat nervously. "I didn't plan for this trip to change my life," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "But it has. Isabelle, you've not only given these girls a second chance at family, but you've given me one, too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps echoed around the room as he knelt before Isabelle. "I know this is sudden, but life has taught me not to wait when you know something is right. Isabelle Carter, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Isabelle's face as she nodded, barely able to whisper, "Yes." The girls erupted into cheers, rushing forward to hug them both. Eleanor, standing off to the side, wiped tears from her eyes, her heart swelling with joy at seeing the family she had helped build come full circle. The wedding, held a month later, was a small, intimate affair in the gardens of Isabelle's resort. The girls acted as bridesmaids, their joy radiating in every smile and laugh. Eleanor stood proudly by Victor's side, her eyes glistening as she watched her son find happiness again. As Victor and Isabelle exchanged vows, the girls looked on with a deep sense of peace. Their family, once fragmented and uncertain, was now whole in a way they had never imagined. That evening, as the family danced under the stars, the girls reflected on how far they had come, from a childhood filled with pain and loss to a life filled with love, acceptance, and hope. With their parents' laughter mingling with their own, they knew they had truly rebuilt the bridges to a brighter future. With Isabelle by his side, Victor's home became complete. The girls continued to pursue their dreams, balancing their singing career with individual aspirations. Their fame grew steadily, but their bond as a family remained their foundation. Sitting around the kitchen table one evening, Victor smiled at his daughters. "No matter where life takes you, This will always be your home, and will always come back, Amaya said, her voice soft but full of conviction. The family had learned that love, resilience, and second chances could overcome even the darkest pasts. Together, they were unstoppable. If you were in Victor's shoes, would you have taken in the 6 sisters? How would you handle discovering their past? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories. See you next time.